LAFD says the victims are a 78-year-old man and a 68-year-old woman. This is a stabbing, Todd. And what do I always say? Stabbing is a very intimate and emotional crime, and almost always the victim is known to the suspect. However, after hundreds of hours of intense review, the FBI and federal agencies were forced to step into the light. The press conference announcing the autopsy results took place in an atmosphere so thick and heavy that no one dared to breathe. Then the results were announced, and they shocked everyone present. According to the forensic summary, Rob Reiner's death could not be neatly filed away as a simple family tragedy. The report noted multiple injuries on the body. Forensic analysts discovered abnormally high concentrations of tranquilizers in the victim's system. Coupled with this was an unnervingly baffling detail. The safe in his study had vanished without a trace. What secrets was Rob Reiner's house concealing? And what truly happened in his final hours? Watch until the end of the video, because the final revelation could overturn everything you thought you knew. Initially, the investigative team followed the familiar, well-worn path, a heartbreaking family tragedy concluded by the passing of a famous figure. But that assumption collapsed very quickly once the detailed autopsy report was revealed. In the neck area, forensic examiners noted deep contusions beneath the tissue layer, which specifically did not correspond to any mechanism of accidental injury. They did not bear the signs of a fall, nor were they the result of a medical incident. In the chest area, doctors found soft tissue damage and signs of compression, indicating direct force applied at close range. This led to the second discovery, and the most chilling detail. There was no evidence of fierce self-defense. Not a single sign of violent resistance was recorded. No posture suggested a life-or-death struggle had taken place. For the investigators, this was the breaking point for the entire initial assumption. As the investigators stepped back to view the entire scene, another sense of unease quickly surfaced. Everything looked too orderly. Furniture was in its correct place. Paintings on the wall were not askew. Personal items placed on shelves remained in order, as if no incident had ever occurred. Furthermore, according to an internal memo, the living room lights were turned off according to routine, not in the chaotic on-off manner typical of emergency situations. Another detail gave them pause. There were no signs of forced entry. Doors were not broken. Windows were not pried open. The security system recorded no forced alarms. This virtually ruled out the possibility of a stranger rushing in. Consequently, the FBI's conclusion led to a chilling point. The victim was completely unaware of the danger from the start, and that could only point to one possibility. The perpetrator was not a stranger. The investigators quickly shifted their focus to Nick Reiner, the victim's son. In reality, Nick had publicly admitted to a prolonged period of addiction starting from his teenage years. According to interviews, he left home very early, severed contact with his family, wandered through several states, and was even genuinely homeless at one point. It was not a single impulsive running away, but many years of estrangement from his parents. In addition, he was someone who knew the layout of the house intimately. He knew the daily habits, the schedule, and how to turn the lights on and off. And most importantly, he was the person who could appear before Rob Reiner without triggering any defensive reaction. Family records show that during that period, the father-son relationship was virtually frozen. Nick's later return to Los Angeles was described as an effort to reintegrate, but also a recontact after a very long rupture, harboring many unresolved underlying conflicts. Neighbors had repeatedly heard shouting, sometimes intense arguments, interspersed with loud, decisive outbursts. "Shut up!" or "Stop doing that!" Significantly, the autopsy results revealed a detail investigators could not ignore. Rob Reiner had tranquilizers in his system. Forensics interpreted this as not a sign of random use, but more likely reflecting a prolonged state of stress, large enough that he had to resort to medication as the only way to manage the pressure. Ironically, on the surface, the Rob Reiner family had long been considered an ideal role model. The media portrayed them as an intellectual, progressive, close-knit, and compassionate family. Their rare public appearances were meticulously calibrated. A calm smile, measured words, and a familiar narrative of mutual understanding between parents and children. But the investigation file told a different story. Behind the closed doors of the Brentwood house, the family relationship was not as smooth as it was presented. Nick's return to Los Angeles, living near his parents after years of fracture, was not just a reunion, but an extended test. New boundaries were set, expectations were never explicitly stated, and tensions accumulated silently, not exploding, but gradually wearing everything down. In this picture, the tranquilizer was no longer a solitary medical detail. It became the trace of an invisible pressure, existing long enough to crack the perfect image the world once believed was real. As FBI investigators began digging deeper into the house, another chilling truth gradually emerged. While the crime scene appeared orderly, the examination team noticed an unusual void in Rob Reiner's personal study. A family safe had gone missing for unknown reasons. This was a small-sized safe, typically used to store important documents, sensitive business contracts, and perhaps a small amount of cash for sudden transactions. What was noteworthy was the complete absence of forced entry signs. Given the size of the safe, removing it would require prior preparation, as well as familiarity with the interior space. If this were merely a common theft, the safe would likely have been discarded somewhere after being broken into. But in this case, the safe seemed to have vanished completely, as if it were deliberately carried away by someone who knew exactly what was inside and what needed to be taken. The disappearance of the safe immediately pushed the motive of the case in another direction: financial and legal interests. Therefore, investigators proceeded to examine Rob Reiner's banking records and transaction history. The results showed that just days before his death, he had withdrawn a large sum of cash. Shortly thereafter, he also made legal moves related to changing important business power of attorney documents. These details led the FBI to pose a grave hypothesis. Rob Reiner's death may have been intended to seize or nullify his final legal intentions, particularly documents that could change the control of projects, assets, or future interests. But things did not stop there. Security footage from a neighboring house inadvertently captured a critical part of the sequence. Contrary to the initial assumption that his son was the perpetrator, the video showed that two unknown men had entered Rob Reiner's house before the victim's time of death. According to the extracted data, the two men appeared with a calm stride without any signs of stealth or haste. Their entry onto the property did not trigger any forced alarms. The gate was not broken. The doorbell was not violently disabled. Everything happened as if they knew exactly where they were going and what they needed to do. From this point, the case moved beyond the scope of a simple family tragedy. Investigators began cross-referencing the appearance time of these two men with Rob Reiner's final legal actions: powers of attorney, project control, and unannounced backstage agreements. In the film industry, such documents are not merely administrative procedures. They can determine tens of millions of dollars, creative ownership, and who is allowed to say what in the future. Hollywood has operated for decades on unwritten agreements, soft power, backstage influence, and commitments that never appear on paper. With his stature and history, Rob Reiner knew a lot. And according to the new line of investigation, it is possible he was holding something someone could not allow to continue existing. The camera discovery did not invalidate the previous forensic conclusions. Rather, it added a concerning layer of meaning. This may have been a carefully planned conspiracy. So, was Rob Reiner's son the killer? The answer is, it cannot be answered yet. According to